The email hit my inbox at 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve, just as I finished lighting the last votive candle on the antique brass candelabra my grandmother left me. The subject line read, "Final transition." No greeting. No context. Nothing but a short note from a junior associate I'd never dealt with directly and an attached PDF. I clicked it open, skimmed the cover page, and felt my stomach drop like I'd missed a step on a dark staircase. It wasn't a simple sign-off. It was a reclassification of every patent I'd originated over 12 years at Apex Dynamics. They'd bundled my entire body of work, protocols I designed from scratch, the redundancy systems that kept client infrastructures alive during blackouts, the edge compression algorithms that won us major contracts, into something called the Unified IP Stack Revision 1. No engineer signature. No audit trail linking back to me. Just a checkbox confirming voluntary reassignment under new corporate stewardship guidelines. Effective January 1st. They wanted me to sign away more than a decade of my life before the ball dropped in Times Square. As if the champagne would dull my memory. As if I wouldn't notice. I sat there, in the soft glow of the candles. The faint pop of distant fireworks already starting outside my suburban Seattle home. And let the weight settle. My name had never appeared in press releases. I didn't chase conference keynotes or LinkedIn clout. I was the one who stayed until 3 a.m. when failover testing finally succeeded during a Pacific Northwest storm that knocked out half the region's data centers. I was the reason Vertex Partners even entertained the $185 million hybrid cloud licensing deal that was supposed to close in 3 weeks. But now, Victor Lang's son Marcus and his polished new executive team saw me as legacy overhead, old scaffolding to be dismantled so they could claim a sleek, modern rebuild. Victor himself had always honored the original understanding we'd built together. It started as a handshake over lukewarm coffee in a cramped office. You build it. It stays yours in spirit. That later became Clause 19B in the contributor agreement. One unassuming paragraph stating that no patent, no derivative work, no reclassification or license transfer involving my original contributions could proceed without my explicit, active consent while I remained engaged as a consultative contributor. I'd kept that engagement alive with a single weekly login to the architecture review portal, just enough time-stamped activity to stay legally active. Enough to matter if anyone ever tried something like this. They either forgot or decided to ignore it. I closed the PDF without signing. Sat motionless for a long time, breathing through the tightness in my chest. Then I did what I always do when the ground shifts. I ran the numbers. I pulled every time-stamped commit from my private archive. I exported folder structures showing my name as originator. I took screenshots of my weekly logins. I printed the signed contributor agreement and highlighted the signature chain. By the time the coffee was brewing, strong, black, the kind that keeps you sharp when everything feels heavy, I had a complete evidentiary file. The rest of the night passed without sleep. I cataloged line after line of code, every version history, every patch I'd authored. Marcus's fingerprints were nowhere on the foundational work. Legal's either. They'd built their shiny new empire on glass, assuming the woman who'd laid the foundation wouldn't notice when they tried to sweep her name away. At 5:52 a.m., I sent one carefully worded email through my personal counsel to Apex's external IP firm, high priority. No preamble. Just the clause, the evidence, and a formal notice freezing all affected patents pending review. That was my quiet declaration. I knew by Monday morning someone would realize they'd tried to rob the wrong person. Marcus Lang arrived at Apex like every trust fund heir who discovers tech late. $3,500 blazer. Jargon-heavy speeches about zero drag velocity and a favorite phrase, legacy bloat, that he wielded like a scalpel. From his first town hall, It was clear he viewed the company as a playground for disruption rather than a living system built by people who'd kept it running through outages and market crashes. I watched from the sidelines at first. I'd seen this cycle before in Silicon Valley. New leaders who mock the very infrastructure keeping the lights on until something breaks and they scramble for the original wrench. Marcus brought in his hand-picked crew, sunglasses at night types with crypto resumes and VC buzzwords who rewrote org charts before mapping the backend topology. They pushed updates that broke staging environments. They rebranded quarterly releases without understanding what those releases actually shipped. I let most of it slide. But in early December, whispers started from engineering ops. Legal was floating streamlined disclosure updates, a polite way of saying they wanted to refresh records to align legacy assets with the future IP strategy. Most senior contributors received polite forms to resign their individual claims. Simple housekeeping, they said. I received nothing except a calendar invite for a 9:30 a.m. meeting titled Transition Planning, Legacy System Sunset. Attendees: Marcus Lang, a legal intern I'd never met, and me. That was when suspicion hardened into certainty. This wasn't modernization. It was erasure of inconvenient people with protective clauses like mine. I went back to the original files from when Victor and I drafted Clause 19B together. We'd sat across from each other over stale bagels, line editing until the language was ironclad. No transfer, reclassification, or a license could be executed on protected technologies without the originating engineer's consent if they remained active via time-stamped records. I'd made sure my weekly logins kept me classified as active. Hundreds of commits. Every tweak, every architecture note bore my user ID. No proxies. No gaps. I printed the clause, highlighted the key sentences, and set it beside the meeting invite. Then I waited. Because here's what the disruptors never understand. When you move fast and break things, the person you should fear most is the one who built what you're breaking. I was still there, quiet, watching, holding the single thread they hadn't noticed running through the entire machine. The meeting room was one of those sleek glass boxes with perfect acoustics for echoes and not enough chairs. I arrived at 9:27, sat across from Marcus, and nodded once. He looked up from his phone like I'd interrupted an important podcast. The intern, maybe 25, typed notes furiously without glancing up. Marcus leaned back. "We're simplifying," he said with the smug confidence only inherited power can buy. "Some legacy codebases, yours especially, are being absorbed into the new unified stack. No offense, but it's time." He smiled the kind of smile people wear when they think they're delivering mercy while they get your life's work. I held his gaze longer than comfortable. "Are you reclassifying the patents outright or just shifting license anchors?" The smile faltered for a second. "Legal's handling it." I glanced at the intern, still avoiding eye contact. Then back to him. "You'll credit me spiritually, I assume." He blinked. The room felt smaller. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I simply stood, nodded once to the intern who finally looked confused, and walked out. I didn't return to my office. I drove home, changed into comfortable flannel, opened the fireproof cabinet, and laid the original contributor agreement on my desk like a chessboard. Clause 19B stared back in crisp black ink. I booted the offline terminal holding my project backups, pulled every commit log, every traceable authorship marker. I drafted, but didn't send, the email to external counsel. The real power isn't immediate reaction. It's waiting until they believe you've accepted the slight. Until they relax. Then you pull the thread. Marcus hadn't read the agreement carefully. He was about to learn what happens when someone who had starts pulling levers. At 6:03 a.m., the formal notice dropped, not from my personal address, but through my counsel's secure channel to Apex's external IP firm. Subject: Action blocked. Unauthorized patent reclassification. 3 attachments. The fully executed contributor agreement with Clause 19B highlighted. My complete 12-year Git commit log with weekly activity proofs, even the Christmas Eve hotfix. And timestamped exports of Marcus's internal migration plans showing the legacy sweep folders. My attorney added a legal freeze notice tied to the holding trust that had safeguarded the patents since the early days. Within minutes, downstream transfer requests began failing. Licensing automations locked. By 7:12 a.m., Apex's internal counsel was leaving careful messages about unexpected complications. The real damage surfaced when Vertex partners called. Their general counsel had received the freeze notice and immediately invoked the reverse penalty clause buried in Section 9.3.2 of the licensing agreement, 3.5% of the $185 million projected value per day starting from activation. That's over $6.4 million every 24 hours. By Friday afternoon, the tally had climbed past $12 million and was rising. Marcus took the call expecting a routine check-in. What he got was a flat demand for confirmation of who authorized the IP lock affecting the exact protocols listed in their schedule. The silence that followed told the story. My backend monitors showed frantic access attempts on signature trails. They hunted for gaps in authorship chains. They found none. Every critical function carried embedded cryptographic markers, immutable blockchain-anchored fingerprints that flagged any unauthorized derivative as tainted. The system remembered what Marcus had forgotten. The Foundation still held the keys. The board meeting convened on a gray Monday morning. Victor Lang entered slowly, cane in hand but posture unyielding, the founder who'd never forgotten the early days. Beside him sat Vertex's licensing partner. Her presence alone spoke volumes. Marcus arrived last, tanned and caffeinated, until he saw the printed documents at every seat and the screen displaying one stark sentence: protected clauses are irrevocable without originator consent. Victor looked straight at his son. Did you really think you could wipe her name from $500 million in patents? He used my name, not legacy contributor. The room fell into the kind of silence that precedes an ending. Documents showed timestamps, freeze notices, the growing penalty tally, and logs carrying Marcus's credentials. Vertex's partner stood. We will require originator affirmation before any further processing. No apology. Just the weight of the gate slamming shut. Marcus left before the meeting ended. By end of quarter, the internal memo announced he had stepped down to explore other ventures. A sterile $24 million line item for IP-related operational disruption appeared in the 10K, quiet scar tissue of a gamble gone wrong. A week later, a plain cream envelope arrived with one centered sentence acknowledging preservation of authorship under the contributor agreement. No signature. No apology. Just surrender. I slid it into the fireproof cabinet beside the original clause. Clause 19B had done its job without courtroom drama, just quiet presence. Somewhere deep in the amended filings, a single line in unreadable legal font reaffirmed co-ownership per the contributor agreement. It didn't name me. It didn't have to. The system remembers. And, eventually, everyone does. What lingers is the question: how many foundations are quietly holding up empires built by people who never bothered to read the fine print?